The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, we encourage you to like and share them on Facebook. Howard Insurance in Port St. Lucie now presents the African American Scene, heard every Wednesday evening in the 6 o'clock hour, with archives on YouTube under WPSL TV. In fact, go to WPSLTV.com. It'll take you directly to our YouTube presence, where you'll find all the archives for the African American Scene. And now, here is your host, the one and the only Rudy Howard.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Always glad to be with you here on a Wednesday night. My, there's an awful lot of stuff going on all around the country. There's so many aspects to what's happening. I'll tell you, it's just amazing. I have to tell you, I don't like to be on a Trump bashing brigade all the time, but his statement last night that the bombs in Beirut in Lebanon were the result of attack was a just irresponsible statement. There was no evidence to that fact. And being the leader of the free world, it was totally irresponsible to make such a statement. And I can't think of anybody who would agree with what he did last night, making an allegation about an attack when there's no basis in fact that there was an attack. Well, tonight, I got two major issues that we're going to talk about. Number one, I told you a couple weeks ago about this letter. Steve, who is always trying to save my soul, writes me these letters. And he thinks that he writes letters that are Christian and are letters that are trying to be prescriptive in terms of things that would better heal our country. And I don't receive them that way. And I wanted to, and I'm trying to find it. I just had it a few minutes ago and I sat it down here somewhere and I don't know where I put it. But I wanted to read in particular for you the most recent letter, which will tell you why we have so much trouble in our country. Our country is filled with reservations about some of the things that are going on and about the need to make changes. And some people are really reluctant to make change. Then others are bashing anybody who is attempting to make change, that they just don't think change should be made. I'm not sure why. And there's a very active attempt, especially when it comes to Black Lives Matter, to totally disregard that movement as having any value to the American people as a whole. Now, here's the thing that I find very interesting. While there is this position many have that it has no value, it has gained considerable steam and support among all people. And one has to wonder why. Why has it gained so much support when there is such direct opposition to what they stand for. Now, I will tell you, one of the things they're doing is an old tactic. They did it to Martin Luther King, which is they take the person who's out in front, who's promoting the change, and then they twist and turn the nature of what they're trying to accomplish to cast them in a bad light. If you recall, the and while now most of us look at Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King with great reverence, if you're old enough to remember back at the time, he was one step away from the devil. And J. Edgar Hoover hated him immensely. And one of the things they said about him back then was he was a communist. Now, there's some of you out there remember that? They said Martin Luther King was a communist. Because why? He was promoting change. People didn't want change. People, you know, I'll tell you a funny story. I was taking some graduate classes when I was in Maryland. And I was in this particular class, and the professor came up and he gave us this, and he was talking about how as managers we would be responsible for trying to manage change. And he gave the example that in his office, he moved his secretary's desk from the right side of the room in front of the window to the left side of the room where she would have more space and thought she would be more comfortable. And she began to act very ugly. And he just could not get his arms around what the problem was. Then all of a sudden, it kind of dawned on him that she was upset about the fact that he moved her desk. So from that, the point that he was trying to make for us young, budding, aspiring managers at the time was that managing change is a dynamic process, requires some very skillful implementation, and be prepared for some setback when trying to do it. Now, one of the things that they've said about Black Lives Matter is they are Marxists. Now, I did some research, and in his letter he talked about an interview that one of the founders had with someone in which she claimed to be a Marxist. I could not find that interview, and this is on Patricia Culler, and I found that she was a graduate of UCLA with a bachelor's degree, and escapes my mind, she's got a master's degree from a particular place, and she believes in nonviolence. Now, you can either believe that or not believe that. You know, this is America, so you have your right. But you don't have a right to say she is something that she does not claim. And by trying to paint her with that negative brush, then I totally reject that. Now, I cannot put my hands on that letter, and I had it in my hands. It wasn't even 10 minutes ago I had it in my hands, and I can't find it. But nevertheless, one of the things that he talked about in the letter was that Black Lives Matter people really don't care about Black lives because they aren't doing anything about black on black crime. Well, that's an old, tired statement the conservatives make. And the reality is 84% of all white murders are white on white crime. So what are you going to do about that? And in the final analysis, there are people who have dedicated their entire lives to working in the community, trying to strengthen the community and trying to do away with some of the crime that takes place in their community. So, but what is happening with the Black Lives Matter movement is separate and distinct. It was born from the situation with Michael Brown and Trayvon Martin, those two incidents. And we have Ralph on line one. Yes, sir.
Yes, good evening, Rudy. I enjoy your program.
Thank you.
I would like to maybe switch gears a little bit. I would like to bring up the subject of stereotyping people.
Okay.
It seems that a lot lately we have this push to change, or maybe I should say improve, the image of African Americans in our society, which I agree with.
Okay,
Now,
well, wait. Okay. Change or improve the image of African Americans? What do you mean by that?
Please let me finish, and it won't take long. The point I want to make.
Okay, all right.
I'm talking about things like removing Aunt Jemima's picture from a box of the pancake mix, taking Uncle Ben's picture off the box of rice, and so on.
Okay.
I'm 70 years old. I actually grew up watching Amos and Andy on television.
Okay.
Now, I saw this show as good, clean comedy that in no way was poking fun at black people. I found that the show had great actors and they were funny.
Okay.
Now, fast forward to today, Mr. Howard.
Mm-hmm.
What do we see on a lot of the daytime TV shows? The perfect examples are The Maury Show, this Jerry Springer character, Steve Wilkos, even the Judge shows, Judge Judy, and so on. Now, if you would observe some of these shows like I have, I don't watch them, but after I retired a couple of years ago, I did watch some daytime TV. I saw that these shows have in common is 80% of the guests are African Americans, and they are all made to look like idiots that have no control over their actions or their lives. Now, the subjects that we see all the time, who is the daddy of this baby? Let's do a paternity test. Who is cheating on who? Let's take the lie detector test. This young 25-year-old man has 6 children by 4 different women. Now, the thing that bothers me so much is when they flash the camera into the audience, much of the audience are African-American people. Don't the African-American people realize that these shows are making fun of them? And they're showing them as far less than responsible citizens. Now, even on these courtroom shows, blacks are actually taking their mothers to court. I mean, who sues their mother? Now, give you a little of my background. I am an American of Italian descent. Both of my parents were Italian. My grandparents were born in Italy. For that reason, I refused to watch that show, The Sopranos, that came out some years ago. And the reason why I refused to watch it is because it depicted Italians as a bunch of gangsters. I actually had a social studies teacher when I was younger stand in front of class and say that all the gangsters were Italian. Not true. Not true. There was Irish. There was Polish. There were Jewish. A lot of the mafia were Italians. That's true. But I stopped supporting this garbage and I refused to watch it. And I guess my message to anyone listening to your show is black people should not support these garbage shows on television because they're not showing black people as they really are. And when I lived in Virginia 17 years ago, I was the only white deacon that was ordained into the Church of God in Christ in Lyndhurst, Virginia. And this is a black church. I know about black people's families and their roots and their good morals and the religious and this type of thing. And my best friends were black people. And as I said, I got ordained the same night as my friend who passed away in that little church. So I know that what they're showing on these shows is ridiculous. And I just think that all black people should refuse to go to the audience to see this garbage and never, ever watch it on TV. I won't watch it anymore. So that's all I really wanted to say. You know, compared to Amos and Andy, you watch the Maury show a couple of times and see, man, this is some garbage out there. And I just like your opinion on that. God bless you, Rudy, and you have a good evening.
Okay, thank you. I agree. That is a very negative representation of black folks as a whole. The only difference between now and Amos and Andy is Amos and Andy at that time was the only image of black people that you were able to see. So the depiction of them as buffoons, while it may have been funny, it was creating an image of black folks that was not truly representative, as Ralph had learned attending a black church. And one of the things, I just got finished reading the book White Fragility by D'Angelo. I can't think of her name, but it was been a bestseller on the New York Times list. And she talks about the unspoken messages that people receive that help to create stereotypes and misinformation about who people of color really are. And I agree with that. And if you know, anybody's been listening to me, I've been saying this, and Cliff and I have been saying this for probably 6 years. One of the keys to success is to get to know somebody who's different than you. I promise you, you will have a different opinion of a person if you get to know them and you find out, oh my God, they want to do the same things I want to do. They want the same things for their family that I want. And when you find that out, that has a profound effect on your thinking. And in addition to that, the other thing that I think we have to do is have a much better presentation of American history. That is really another major problem. I posted something this week, and it put tears in my eyes when I watched it. This little girl is going through the park and finds this headstone sitting in the ground of Edward Pratt, little white girl. And she thought it was kind of strange because it had on there his date that he was alive, and he died when he was 39 years old. She decided on her own to go out and research and find out who Edward Pratt was. Edward Pratt was a civil rights person in her town, I think it was Seattle. And he had the nerve to be the first black person to move in this white community in that town, and they killed him on the steps of his house. And she petitioned the school board to name the new educational center the Edward Pratt Center. And she was successful. I knew, and I think I'm a pretty learned guy, I knew nothing about this guy. And everybody I sent it to said, man, I didn't know anything about this guy. But that one little white girl had a stroke of fairness in her soul. And she went out there and she corrected a wrong with her own tenacity to get it done right. So I'm sorry I cannot put my hands on that, because he called me the other day because evidently somebody told him that I was going to talk about that letter this week. And we proceeded to have a shouting match over the phone, since he said that I mischaracterize many of the things he says. And since I cannot put that letter in front of me right now, I will not speak any further on that until I can read it verbatim, because I want to read it verbatim so that he cannot make that allegation. But what I will say is that this, and I've run into this quite a bit here recently, that people tell me that they love me as their Christian brother and then proceed to say nasty or things to me, and that is supposed to cover up for what it is that they wanted to say. That doesn't work. Let me just tell you, that does not work. Now, for the most part, and I'm going to fault my people for this, for the most part, we are too nice about people saying stuff in front of us that are inappropriate, and frequently we let it go because we want to be polite and we don't want to be disruptive at the moment at a social event. I very, very rarely let that stuff go. And the reason why I don't let it go is because I believe in my soul, after being on this earth for 68 years, that sometimes it's done on purpose in a way so that they know that you're defenseless to respond to that nasty thing that they've said. And so that gives them a license to do it again. And you'll never get that license from Rudy Howard. People do that. They do that and then tell you that you're their Christian brother. And just like not long ago, I was having a debate with somebody, and he was telling me that he was praying for me in Christian love and then called me a boy. Now,
cancel that out.
Right, exactly. You
start feeling good and realizing, wow, this guy might really be a friend, and then they speak the intentions of their heart out loud.
That's right.
And it's not good.
That's right. That's exactly right. Now, I'm going to take this call, but let me tell you what we're going to do next. A friend of mine, I have this Friday night phone calls called the virtual cocktail hour. And it's a bunch of us that went to school together. And there's a report that was done called Behind the Badge. And one of the members of my group had sent me a little snippet of the report, and I asked her to send it to me, and it's really quite fascinating. It is, Pew Research did it, and they interviewed over 8,000 cops all across the United States on various topics, and I'm going to reveal some of those responses to you this evening. But let me give you Winnie. Winnie on line 1. Yes, Winnie.
Yes, how y'all doing tonight?
Good, good.
We were in Colorado about the cops had stopped this light lady and her the children and things like this here. They drew the gun on her.
Yes.
And they made a mistake. They thought that her car, her vehicle was stolen and everything. And they apologized to her. But, you know, that's terrible. They drew the gun on her for... That's wrong. Suppose the gun would have went off and anything. You know what I'm saying?
Oh.
And that's terrible. They had handcuffed her and the kids, had them on the ground, and things like this here. Like, you think they cops should be fired, or they should get paid leave, suspension, or what you think might happen?
I think I saw that, and I think that was absolutely disgraceful. There was 6 cops standing there, and there was 6 cops standing there, and there was a mother, and I think it was 3 kids. Yeah. She had a 17-year-old, I think a 13 or 14-year-old, and then a 7-year-old. And they had him with handcuffs behind their back,
right,
face down on the ground.
Right.
Just absolutely no, just use some common sense. You got 6 cops there, a mother and 3 kids. Now, how were they going to overpower you? You had the upper hand completely in the numbers. So why was it necessary to do that? It just wasn't necessary.
Necessary, no. That's terrible. I'm glad they put it on the news and everything. She said they believe because they did that because she was blind. Could be. You know, racism will never go away. You know that guy about George Floyd, the rookie caught last. I think his last name. They say he drew the gun on Floyd in a car. It drew a gun on him before they killed him. And I said, man, why they drew a gun on these people? That's crazy. You heard about that?
I saw the video. They showed the updated video.
No, but he drew the gun on because he said Floyd was sitting in his vehicle, the car or something. Why he gonna draw a gun on the man? The man is on. To me, that's crazy.
And he's in the car, begging them not to shoot him. You can hear Floyd saying, "Please don't shoot me."
Oh.
You know, so hey. But hey, that's, you know, it is what it is.
Crazy.
And that's...
you're right about that.
Yeah.
We'll be talking. Have a good night.
Okay, Winnie. Thank you. Well, some of this information I found very, very fascinating. Now, here's one of the questions. You're going to love this. I found it very interesting. Most white Latino officers say fatal encounters between blacks and police are isolated incidents. Okay? Majority of black officers disagree. Now, remember now, this is not activists they interviewed here. These are police officers. Now, let me give you the breakdown. Men, 69% say it was an isolated incident. 30% say is an indication of broader problems. Women, 60% say it was an isolated incident. And 39% say it is an indication of broader problems. Then they go on to break it down. Whites, 72% say it was an isolated incident, and 27% say it's a sign of broader problems. Blacks, 43% say it's an isolated incident, and 57% said it's signs of a broader problem. That's black police officers now on the force. 57% of them said it's an indication of a broader problem. Hispanics are consistent with what whites. 72% said it's an isolated incident, and 26% say it's a sign of a broader problem. Now, I just find that very interesting that in that interview and those statistics, there's such a wide disparity between how black officers view those incidents and how white officers view those incidents. But I guess that's a magnifying look at our society in general with that response. Here's another one. Increased sense of callousness linked to officers' views on aggressive tactics and negative feelings toward the job. Okay. Among officers who say they have or have not become more callous, the percent who say their work nearly always often makes them feel good, 63% say they become more callous. 50% said that their work makes them feel proud, and 32% said that their work makes them feel fulfilled, and 30% say that they have become more angry. And we got Jay on line one.
Okay, good afternoon, Rudy. How you doing?
Okay.
Yeah, with your question, you know, the thing that I think about is when I had the opportunity to be in, the NYPD Academy, and I met the president of the Guardians. That's the black police officers of the NYPD.
Uh-huh.
And then they switched it to 100 blacks in law enforcement. And that's you need to talk to somebody like that, so these people on this radio station will understand what's going on and how, African Americans have to deal with, even with the uniform on. And it was a time in the 80s and the early 90s, there were white police officers shooting undercover black officers that were they knew who they were, because they have when they get into the precinct and they go through their roll call, they get the colors of the day. They know who the colors. They know who these people are when they see them, and they know that's what they look. They go by the colors, and so they know who's out there and what they have to do. But they still shot and killed. And one of them was a neighbor of mine. He was undercover. He was dealing with narcotics dealers and all of that, and he was shot running after a guy was chasing him, and the cops saw him chasing with a gun in his hand, so the cops shot him, and he died. And the thing that was so horrible about that whole situation was his teenage son committed suicide because he was so broken up about it. And it goes on and on and on, but it's like the untold story. They never talk about that with all of this brutality, what's going on with Black Lives Matter and everything. But there's a lot of black police officers' lives have been lost to other brothers in blue.
But you know what? Here's the problem. And I understand the problem just like you do.
Yeah.
They can't say anything. They're trapped. Once they're in the brotherhood, unless they want to be ostracized for life, as in some cases, I did a story a couple weeks ago about the lady in Buffalo that after 19 years they kicked her off the force because she interrupted the guy who was physically assaulting a person that they were arresting, and she thought he had gone overboard, and they fired her. So I understand that, you know, a lot of these officers who don't agree with what's going on are kind of stuck. But, you know, I have to honestly say, I couldn't stay there. I'd have to leave.
Yeah.
You
I
know
know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, my brother-in-law was a JAG officer in the Army. Had a good career going for himself, and he said he could not take the gross injustice that was happening to minority soldiers. So when his time was up, he got out, and they wanted him to stay. He said no, and he left. So I think that would be my position if I was on the force. Although that's some good money, I know.
Yeah, what I hear, and I met some, and there's been some activists, some that stepped out and, you know, complained and got on TV and made public announcements about what was going on. You're right, you know, they become pariahs, and you know, during the time of Serpico, they don't talk about that. All of that corruption and police officers taking money from dope dealers, and there was another lady that I knew. Her brother came out of the Marine Corps about the same time I came out of Vietnam. He came out and he joined the NYPD, and he didn't want any money. They put him up in Harlem, up in the 32nd Precinct, which is in the heart of Harlem, New York. And certain days they come around and give you so much money. He said, "What's this money for?" And this is what she was telling me. And he said, "I don't want a penny of it. I get a salary. You know, I do my job, and I don't want to have anything to do with that." They set him up to go into the basement of a building that was, you know, they planted it, and they had the drug dealer executed him.
Yeah.
That's how they got rid of him. That's because they didn't know if he was a plant. This is the police, you know, the captain of the precinct and right on down. They didn't know if he was a plant because it was unusual for some, you know, officers didn't want to take any money, and so that's what happened with him. And so they had a hit job on him, the police, and what the people that the president, everybody is praising so much, you know, saying they're such great people, but they have a lot of problems. And that was back in the NAP Commission, it was called. All you have to do is just go online and say the NAP Commission, and you'll find a lot of stuff that happened. And to me, a lot of these people that are talking about what's going on with the police and all that, they need to bring up some of the stuff that they did and show you how, you know, a lot of it hasn't even been corrected, even though it's not about drugs anymore. It's just about not being prosecuted for outright murder. Like this guy that killed Floyd up there, you know, they say that, you know, all of everything you watch and everything you were just talking about, how the man was pleading for his life in the car before they put him on the ground, it doesn't matter to them. They don't have it. It's all about racism. They got this white supremacist view. They still think they're running down slave catchers, you know. So it's just a sad situation, and that's why it's such an imbalance when you talk about the white police officers compared to African Americans. I don't even count the Hispanic, because some of the Hispanics, they assimilate. They want to be white, so that's their problem.
Well, listen, Jay, you try to
Yes,
give
sir.
people education about slave catchers. You give people.
Well, that's how they started out.
Oh, of course, I know that. You know, most of the people didn't even get what you said, because that started 1864, which was
Right.
part of the basics for how the police department started in the first place, to catch
Absolutely.
slaves. Yes, people don't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, my
All right,
friend.
bro. Take it easy, man.
Okay.
A little education is good.
Yes, sir. Okay, that's interesting. Did you know that about slave catchers?
No, that police were put together originally for that purpose.
Part of the reason was the original formation of police was to help catch slaves. Then, once the slaves were freed in 1864, and the farmers were losing their labor the police would then capture black people on minor violations and commit them to sentences, and guess what some of the sentences were?
Going to work for somebody for free.
There you go.
They get a job as a slave with no pay and no benefits, except maybe a place to live and something to eat once in a while.
There you go.
Wow.
So that was part of. So this police thing with black people was gone back for.
So it goes way back.
Way back. You know, I don't think most people really understand that.
One of those things that never went away.
Yes.
Yeah, wow.
And people listening to the show tonight, some of them will probably get their Google out. Go ahead, get it out. I want you to double check me. Okay, here's another one of the surveys. The local police minority relations. How do officers, black, white, and Hispanic, look at police minority relationships? The white officers, 92%, say positive. And now let me get this right here. I'm reading it wrong. Yeah, well, yeah. 92% say positive, and 91% of the black officers say negative, and 90% of the white Hispanic officers say positive. So once again, you have this big disparity between how white, black, and Hispanic officers view the relationship between the minority community and the police. Very, very interesting. And this is Pew Research, so, and you can, and let me give you the name of this study again so you can look it up. Like Chuck, I know Chuck will probably want to look it up. It's called Behind the Badge. Behind the Badge. It's a Pew Research Center study. So you can find it for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. Okay, I'm going to skip this one. Let me go to this one here. Okay, this one, they're asking officers if it is important to know the community that you're serving in. Okay? Overall, this is the overall, 72% say it's very important, and 25% say somewhat important, and 3% say not too important. Now, here's a breakdown. We're going to go men, women, white, black. Men, 71% say it's important. 26% say is not that important. And women, 80% say it's important. And 18% say somewhat important. Then we go into the racial breakdown, and whites is 69% say it is very important. 28% say it's somewhat important. Blacks, 84% say it's very important. 14% say somewhat important. And Hispanics, 78% say very important, and 20% say somewhat important. And Bobby on line one, yes, sir.
Yeah, Rudy. I think we're missing a lot of the big point here. I know a lot of cops now that are quitting the job, and I don't blame them. But let's look at the United States of America, where everyone wants to come, even people from Africa and Haiti and everywhere else. They want to come here. And, you know, we live in the best country in the world, or we did up until 3 months ago. We had the best economy, and everybody of every race was doing better. We should have the lowest crime rate of anybody, and I blame the public school system, and I blame the Democrats for keeping the people of color poor. just to get their votes. We should have the police in this country should be sitting at Dunkin' Donuts like they used to in the old days with the Maytag repairman doing nothing in the best country in the universe.
So, Bobby, you think Democrats have kept black people poor?
Absolutely, Rudy. We talked a couple of years ago, and you're familiar with my area where I grew up at Ewing High School near Trenton.
Yes.
We were 22% blacks. We got along famously. We didn't have one racial problem. But we also had teachers that were teaching American history, not what can you give me and what has this country done wrong from hundreds of years ago. I mean, we have to move on. Everybody has to move on. This is the best country in the world, or it was. Now it's a mess again. Within a couple of months, we've ruined the best economy ever. We need to start moving on. All this blame everybody else stuff, it doesn't fly with white people because we didn't own any slaves, Rudy. I mean, we're not into this. We actually see, and I've heard other white people say, it's worse now than it was back then in Ewing High. We got along fantastically. We partied together. We hung out together. I think I told you at that time a couple of years ago, Butchie Peters in Ewing High, one of the nicest guys. They had two brothers in school with them. He's a black guy. His mom was affluent. She had a Jaguar. He ran into a tree in front of the local bank. And she told me she was so shocked there was more white people in that Baptist church than there were her own parishioners. And that's just the way it was back then. Now it's like, let's all blame the old white people and this and that. We're tired of that crap. You know, you're living in the best country in the world. Get on with it. Don't let the Democrats keep you down.
Okay, Bobby, let's take a dose of reality.
Well, that's why I'm trying to teach you.
All right. Well, let's try to take a dose of reality. I graduated from high school in Willingboro, New Jersey. Okay.
Yeah.
When I moved to Willingboro, New Jersey, there was only like 25 black families in the whole town. Now you wouldn't believe it today, but because they did they got busted, the real estate companies, for blockbusting Willingboro, and they've since created a different sense of balance. But when I first moved there was hardly any black people there. Now, was it a panacea? No, it wasn't. Was it a nice community to live in? Yes, it was. Did I get a good education? Yes, I did after I played catch-up because I had moved from Philadelphia. But,
God bless you.
Yeah, well.
I live right near there, you know.
Okay, so that's why there is issues that have to be ironed out. Now, the problem is you don't want to hear it because it offends you.
We're done ironing out. We're done being blamed for it. Like I told you, we had better relations back in 1978 when I graduated Ewing High School.
Okay.
Than we have now. And it's I don't get it. You know, I moved here from California to get my kids the hell out of Los Angeles. And we moved here, and the first thing they did, they bused my oldest son, who was 6 years old, to Delaware Avenue, to the old Fort Pierce Elementary. It looked like a dungeon. Looks better now. It had turned into something else. And then they would bust the black children from Fort Pierce here, and they bust my kid like 2 hours a day driving back and forth. And I found out it was some judge of Rudy in Miami or something from 30, 50 years before said that there was segregation in St. Lucie County, and that law stood forever. What the hell's going on here? Time to move on. Let's all move on together. We don't care how tan you are. We don't care what's going on. Feed what you breed. Do well in school. Let's get rid of these public schools and get school choice, and let's move on. This is getting ridiculous, and I'm tired of it, to tell you the truth. I'm telling you, I'm being honest with you, Rudy.
Okay, I understand. I appreciate your point of view. I got to let you go. I got Chuck on line 3. Yes, Chuck.
Hey, Rudy. Yeah, lightweight tonight. no echo today. So all I was trying to put in last week was that I think people with the employers giving out health care, that they consider it something that has to be done. And when it, like when the Obamacare came out and Walmart cut it down to part-time so that they didn't have to supply health care, that a lot of people were shocked at the fact that, Walmart could do that, take their insurance away. So that's all I was trying to say. The echo got to me, and I couldn't get my point across to you.
Okay.
And the other thing was I looked up the 1099. Now, for a 1099, the sources I was reading from all were coming from the IRS.
Okay.
A 1099 is more or less a contractor. Like,
that's right.
You've got somebody coming into your house or coming into your office and painting the thing because they can set their own time, their own supplies. Now, I could have swore I heard you say that people that work hourly work can also be hired as 1099.
That's correct.
Yeah, well, according to that, your company would be getting into a lot of problem. There was one company hiring people, and because they have to do a schedule, follow a schedule, they can't refuse to do the tasks they're giving, and they're given training on certain things. They cannot be registered as 1099. Otherwise, when it comes tax time, I forget the name of one company was $3.5 million penalty for doing just the same thing that you were talking about.
So let me tell you how you get around it. You're right. Everything yes, you can. Let me tell you how you get around it. No, listen.
How do you get around it?
Okay, all right, yeah, listen, because I'm going to teach you something again.
Wait.
Okay, what you do is you can go through a temp agency service, and they can hire you from a temp agency service as a contract worker and make you a 1099. That's how you do it. So you now have an hourly worker working as a 1099. What you said is true about getting in tax trouble if you have an employee that you make a 1099. It's not a 1099.
Okay.
But we're at the go ahead.
I'll research that some more.
Okay.
Just to make sure, and I will look up behind the badge.
Yes.
We'll do research.
Okay. All right.
We'll do that. All right. Have a good evening.
Okay. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, folks, boy, that went by fast.
That worked.
Yeah, I got a whole bunch of more questions here. I'll save those till the next time. I think next week I'm going to have my son and his partner on for their organization, Friends Over Bullies. So stay tuned next week, and we're going to talk about that. God bless, be safe, and I'll see you next Wednesday for the African American Center.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast. Time right now is 7 o'clock.